In recent months and years, we have consistently warned against the potential deterioration of the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory. This ongoing cycle of violence results from the absence of a political solution to the Palestinian question and the dire conditions in which generation of Palestinians are forced to live. We must put an end to this ongoing tragedy in Gaza. During these last 10 days, the civilian population in the Gaza Strip is under airstrikes with no area can be a safe shelter. This is not a war against Hamas, but a war against Palestinian civilians, children, women, and elderly. More than 60% of the casualties are among children and women. Mr. President, first, Algeria strongly condemned the deliberate attack on civilians in the Gaza Strip by the occupying forces, resulting in thousands of casualties. We condemn also, in the strongest word, the airstrike against the Ahli Anglican Hospital that resulted on the death of nearly 500 civilians. There can be no justification for targeting hospitals, clinics, medical personnel, and UN facilities. International law protects this critical infrastructure. We should strongly condemn any violation of these rules. No one is above the law. Attempts to absolve the occupying power of responsibility for such acts are unacceptable. Secondly, it is imperative to adequately address the humanitarian needs of the affected population. We must ensure unimpeded humanitarian access to the Gaza Strip. The occupying power should lift its siege and collaborate with UN humanitarian agencies. It must also rescind its order to evacuate the northern area of Gaza. Third, any attempt to equate the Palestinian people and the occupying power is unacceptable. What we are witnessing today is an assault on a defenseless Palestinian population, a crime against humanity. Mr. President, in conclusion, I want to reiterate the solidarity and support of the Algerian people to the Palestinian people. Faced to the rapid deterioration of the humanitarian on the ground, the Council should not remain silent. We regret that the Security Council once again and for the 7th consecutive year has failed to shoulder its responsibilities and to adopt a substantive resolution on the Palestinian question. Therefore, we will call upon the international community to take swift action to halt this heinous act, which violate international law and human dignity. Also, let me be vocal. There can be no lasting peace in the Middle East without a just resolution of the Palestinian question. The time has come to unite our effort toward establishing a sovereign Palestinian state with Al-Quds Sharif as its capital. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Algeria for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd like to first congratulate Brazil for its very successful and active presidency, and also thank China, Russia, and UAE for convening this meeting, and the Special Coordinator as well as Under-Secretary General Martin Griffiths for their briefing. Mr. President, today is the 11th day of relentless and catastrophic Israeli attacks on Gaza. All of Gaza is under a military siege, and electricity, water, and all humanitarian aid channels have been cut off. The entire population of Gaza, women, children, and the elderly, are being collectively punished by the indiscriminate Israeli attacks. Pakistan strongly condemns Israeli airstrikes and military incursions into Gaza, the killing of civilians, and the large-scale displacement of an already occupied and battered people. Mr. President, the laws of war and international humanitarian law, especially the Geneva Conventions, must be strictly observed. Pakistan strongly and unequivocally condemns Israel's cowardly and criminal attack on the Al-Ahli hospital yesterday, killing hundreds, mostly sick and wounded Palestinian children, women, and men. This willful atrocity, an attack on a hospital which enjoys explicit protection under international law, is clearly a war crime and a crime against humanity. Those responsible for this crime must be held accountable through a full international inquiry and accountability process and on this incident and other crimes which have been committed in this conflict. Mr. President, Pakistan supports an immediate ceasefire. We regret that the Security Council was unable to issue a call for a ceasefire due to the opposition and insufficient support for the Russian resolution the day before and for the Russian amendments for a ceasefire this morning. Although the Brazilian resolution needed considerable improvement in our view, we were surprised at the Council's inability to adopt this resolution due to a veto cast by a permanent member. A heavy responsibility rests on those who have contributed to the prolongation of the consistent bombing of Gazan citizens that is taking place as we speak. Mr. President, consistent with decisions taken last year regarding the use of the veto, we expect that the General Assembly will address this conflict. Despite the paralysis in the Security Council today, we hope that the General Assembly and the UN Secretary General and UN agencies will be able to halt the conflict, secure the opening of humanitarian corridors to ensure food, water, and medicines, fuel, and other essential supplies to the Palestinians in Gaza, and prevent the displacement of the Palestinian population of Gaza. The OIC Executive Committee of Foreign Ministers met today and has proposed, among other things, the dispatch of an international protection force to protect innocent lives from the ongoing attacks by the occupation forces and extremist colonialist settlers. The UN should give urgent consideration to this proposal. Mr. President, let us not forget that the root cause of this latest violence is the prolonged and illegal occupation of Palestine and the usurpation of the lands and properties of Palestinians and the accompanying oppression and massive violations of human rights committed with impunity by Israel. The illegality of Israel's occupation has been reaffirmed by the advisory opinion of the ICJ. Any attempt to create a false equivalence between Israel, the aggressor, and the Palestinians, the victims, is untenable legally, morally, and politically. Let us also recall that the struggle of peoples under foreign and alien occupation for self-determination and national liberation is legitimate under international law, and they have the right to use all possible means in this struggle to achieve freedom. It is the suppression of this struggle for freedom which is illegal. Under the UN Charter, states have the right of self-defense against attacks on their sovereignty and territorial integrity. Yet, a state which is in forcible occupation of a foreign territory cannot invoke the right of self-defense against those whose territory it has illegally occupied. Mr. President, the final solution to the protracted conflict that has claimed so many lives and continues to jeopardize the stability of the entire region lies in the creation of a secure, viable, contiguous, and sovereign state of Palestine on the basis of the pre-June 1967 borders with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. Thank you, sir.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of South.
Mr. President, thank you for enabling South Africa and other non-council members to contribute to the debate on this alarming and abhorrent development in an already tragic conflict, which is getting worse by the day. We thank the briefers for the information shared with us. South Africa condemns in the strongest possible terms the killing of civilians in Palestine and Israel. The targeting of civilians in armed conflicts is in violation of international humanitarian law and Geneva Conventions. Mr. President, just as the attack by Hamas on civilians in Israel was abhorrent, there are no words to fully express South Africa's condemnation of Israel's bombing of the Ali Arab Baptist Hospital on the 17th October, killing well over 500 people and injuring over 1,000. The targeting of a hospital considered a safe haven under international humanitarian law is a war crime. Similarly, the killing of the people of Gaza by Israel in 12 days of aerial bombardment of hospitals, schools, apartment buildings, and essential infrastructure are also war crimes. The continual bombardment of civilian targets, the denial of the civilian population of Gaza of water, food, fuel, and electricity is prohibited under international humanitarian law and by Geneva Conventions. The bombing of Ali Arab Baptist Hospital in Gaza is the most blatant violation of international humanitarian law. Doctors are operating without anesthetics and do not have the medical equipment or supplies to treat the victims. The suffering of children and their parents are unspeakable and unfathomable in this day and age, and there must be consequences for these actions. Otherwise, the international structures established to maintain international peace and security have utterly failed. The Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital, which was bombed on Tuesday night, is one of the 22 hospitals in the northern Gaza which were ordered by the Israeli military to evacuate their patients and staff within 24 hours or be responsible for the consequences. Hundreds of civilians were sheltering in the hospital when it was bombed, as it was supposed to have been a safe place to shelter. Under international humanitarian law and Geneva Conventions, Israel is committing war crimes and needs to be held responsible for its actions by the International Criminal Court and the international community as a whole. Mr. President, South Africa calls on the international community to end its indifference to the gross violation against the Palestinian people in Gaza, and for the UN Security Council to take enforcement action to halt the unfolding genocide. And we regret that the Security Council once again was not able to adopt a basic resolution on the humanitarian resolution in Palestine. South Africa calls for an immediate ceasefire and the immediate opening of a humanitarian corridor to allow in medicine, food, and supplies. South Africa calls on Israel to cease its genocidal campaign against the Palestinians. We call on the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Ahmad Khan, to immediately signal his intent to investigate the Al-Ahli bombing and other war crimes and the crime of genocide in this conflict, and to include in his investigation the liability of those aiding and abetting these crimes. I thank you.
I thank the representative of South Africa for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. بداية أتوجه بالشكر إلى وفود روسيا الاتحادية والإمارات العربية المتحدة والصين على طلب عقد هذه الجلسة الطارئة، كما وينضم وفدي إلى البيان الذي ألقاه المندوب الدائم للمملكة الأردنية الهاشمية باسم المجموعة العربية. السيد الرئيس، شهدنا يوم أمس واحدة من أبشع الجرائم ضد الإنسانية التي عرفتها البشرية في العصر الحديث، وأكثرها دموية، والتي أتت في سياق العدوان الإسرائيلي المستمر على الشعب الفلسطيني. تدين الجمهورية العربية السورية بأشد العبارات المجزرة الشنيعة التي ارتكبتها قوات الإجرام الصهيونية بحق مئات الأبرياء في مستشفى المعمداني بقطاع غزة. إن هذه المجزرة تعتبر عملاً وحشياً يعبر عن مستوى حقد السلطات الإسرائيلية الذي تجاوز بجرائمه أقصى درجات العدوانية، وهي لا تذكرنا إلا بجرائم هذا الكيان الذي قام وتأسس عليها، وتعكس صورة صارخة لاستمرار نهج العصابات التي أنشأت هذا الكيان المجرم. إن هذه المجزرة المؤلمة ما كانت لتحصل لولا عرقلة بعض الدول الغربية اعتماد مشروع القرار الإنساني الذي كانت قد قدمته روسيا الاتحادية أول أمس، مما وفر مظلة الحماية لاستمرار الجرائم الإسرائيلية. لقد بات واضحاً أن استمرار صمت المجتمع الدولي